I think for me, I was motivated by fear. My most productive times was when I was in serious trouble and someone was repossessing my house, repossessing my car, and I just focused on the business, and I was getting in my car and I drove around to 3,500 stores in a year and a half and sold it into pretty much every one of them. And that was when I was laser focused, because I
tell people that story all the time.
By fear.
If they're ever, I remember chatting to early stage food and drink entrepreneurs, I reference back to your episode. I tell them that exact story because people are like, oh, I just can't seem to grow. I can't seem to get a place. I'm like, have you done this?
Yeah, exactly.
Because until you've done that, I wouldn't, sound the alarm bells yet, unless you're willing to go door to door, talk to people. I think people have this expectation it's going to be a lot easier than it is.
Well, I advise 3 or 4 different companies, and I do pro bono because I don't want people to suffer with the way I did. And the chances are they are, right? People in our business, it's a huge failure rate. And I always say to them, how many stores are you in? And I'll write it on a piece of paper and they'll answer and I'll go, and they say 200 and I've got 200 written down. And I say, get off your effing ass, get into your car and double that sales. If you double that sales, you get 10 a week. It's going to take you a very small amount of time to actually, in 3 or 4 months' time, you're going to have to double the size of your company. Would you like to double the size of your company? Well, yeah. Well, then get into another 200 stores. It's not that difficult. And I call it the business version of skipping leg day. You're basically, which I've skipped leg day for 25 years, by the way. That's why I wear long pants all the time. But people naturally don't want to sell. I didn't want to sell. I didn't want to go from store to store, harassing some manager saying, please take my drinks. But when I was going broke, I had to do it. So it forced me into like a massive failure. And that's how I was motivated. I could hardly afford to put petrol in the car to actually get around the place, and my house had gone. So the only thing I could do was get into stores. And guess what? I went from the company being insolvent to a very successful brand within the space of like 18 months just by selling it in. It makes so much sense, but people don't want to do it.
Why?
I think even though we're Irish, we're great in a pub or a restaurant, but we are always embarrassed to sell to people. Americans are kind of born to sell. They'll sell you anything and they're like super enthusiastic about it. We're just a bit cynical. So I think I used to sit outside stores and I'd say to myself, I'd do one thing every day that scares you, and I'd push myself into it because I don't know, it was weird. And I often say to people, oh, I used to have a bit of a phobia about selling, and they're like, but how? Like, you're the biggest salesman I know. But yeah, I'll always chat to people and it seems like sales, but when you're actually told, go sell that, it's a lot more difficult. I think as a nation, we're quite cynical and we kind of just go into ourselves and go, oh God, it's a bit embarrassing going in the sound of that guy. But it's your life. You got to do it. And what I realized is that the manager's job is to actually receive your sales. So once I started going into them and talking to them, you get the odd rude guy who's having a bad day or whatever, and that does hurt and it kind of makes you go into yourself a little bit. But once you start getting going, I ended up loving it. I loved sales. You just got to push yourself out there and again on your cliff and just push yourself off the cliff. And suddenly you'll double the size of your company in 2 or 3 months. That's not a bad thing.
It's mad. Like if you could tell someone that going, if you just do this every day for a year, you'll double the size of your company. They do anything.
Yeah.
But they won't do that unforced. I think we really need to kind of like reshape how we think about things a little bit in Ireland, because there is that kind of like hesitancy. I think you've summed it up perfectly there. We're great crack. Great to have the chats. Yeah. But when it comes to going,
don't try and sell me anything.
Oh, and will you take will you take this then? Oh, no. Yeah. But it's mad because like I was talking to someone about this last week. Like, you're generally one connection away in Ireland. In America, it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You're 6 degrees away from the place you want to be. In Ireland, it's generally 1.
Yeah, and that's an amazing tool, LinkedIn, which certainly wasn't around.
Unbelievable. People hate it. I love it.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Now I've been in the business a long time and you get to know more people, but I've never been that corporate guy at the top of Coca-Cola and I can phone up the top of Tesco and that kind of stuff. But what I would always do is if we really want to get into a country, and let's say I want to get into Norway, for instance, we just got in there recently. I would contact my distributor. I'd look at LinkedIn and I'd find the company I want to get to and I'd see who they know. And then I will contact the people that they know and say, listen, can you introduce me to him? I mean, it's fantastic. It's all sitting there right in front of you.
What would you do in 2024? going to put you on the spot now, Gary, starting in 2024. You don't have your contacts, you don't have your money, you don't have the brand. You're like, right, I'm going to do something this year. You can circle back on this in a while.
Yeah.
But have a think of what business would you start in 2024?
Well, I'll still probably come to the same answer. So obviously you need capital to do something. So what I would do is I would walk around my local Tesco and I would find anything that isn't being currently challenged. So whether it's Ariel, Fairy Liquid, something like that. Toilet paper was done recently. The company that's doing millions called Who Gives a Crap, and they basically use bamboo, which is eminently more recyclable than the paper that they're using. So that one's done. But I would go around, I'd look at dog food. I think that's done a lot. But I would find something on the shelves in Tesco. If you gave me like an hour, I'd find something.
Would you do food and drink again?
Oh yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, on my phone, I'm a typical bloke. I'm a one-trick pony. I have to focus on one thing. So VitHit is it, and we grow it around 25% a year for the last 10 years. So nothing. Nice. So nothing else is going to do that, right?
Yeah.
But if I was ever out of VitHit, I have a list of things in FMCG and food and drink that I would get into, and it's just, for me, I think it's great to challenge these really big, slow, monolithic companies. Like, I'm still challenging Coca-Cola and Britvic and Lucozade and those guys, because they can't shuffle as fast as I can. And it's harder for them to create a brand, because if you tell Coke, for instance, to come up with a new kombucha drink or a new vitamin drink, you're going to have someone in that company who isn't personally linked to it. So they will basically have somebody who's making a wage and who will probably leave the company in 4 years. So they'll start it up and they'll be, into it, and it'll be their project. And then suddenly they'll leave. Someone else has to carry the baggage. And then it's not turning over what it should, which my company wasn't for 11 years. And it'll be cut out, and because it's the last in the dying herd, and it'll be attacked. And then there'll be another new project and another new person coming in. So you don't have that real need and desire to succeed within those companies. And that's why individuals have a shot at taking on those big guys.
Would you sell VitHit?
Yeah, I'm not completely against it. So if you look at the top 30 to 40 Irish drinks companies, we're the only one in the top 30, I think, and we're number 7 best-selling drink in Ireland. And in the UK, we're the number 1 functional drink. So I kind of like those stats, and I want to. So VitHit is a very high-selling product in Ireland, and it's growing at a serious pace in the UK. So I want to create that same model in pretty much every country around Europe. I want to do it in France, I want to do it in Switzerland, etc., etc. So my job's not done here, even though we're 25 years old. We're really still only a challenger brand. We're only getting going. So the accelerator is really moving now. So if you're moving at 25% a year 10 years ago, it's a much smaller amount from compounding than it is today. So let's say 25% of 1 million is 1.25, but 25% of 30 million, I'm no mathematician, but it's a lot bigger. So that's kind of where we are now. So we're really growing at a very fast pace now. And that's exciting for me. Obviously you have to look at your family. I'm 53 now, and if anyone came in with a stupid offer, I would have to listen, but it's not currently on our agenda.
How do you choose where to expand into, and how do you do it?
Well, it used to be whoever would take us.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, when you're starting, if you get one man in a truck who's going to take your product, you'll just give it to him and let him sell it wherever. We're a lot more choosy now, because there's a thing called the grey market, which means, you could be selling to the UK. If you sell to the wrong guy, he'll sell it into Ireland, underpriced, and you can kind of mess your whole distribution model up. But now we go to European trade shows, and we've got, let's say, 14 to 16 countries, depending on the time of year you're asking me, around the world. And you could have a guy coming, and let's say we're not in France, and he says, look, I'd really like to take this into France. And then you just do a bit of research on him, and you say, well, what other brands do you have? And if he doesn't have any brands that we would aspire to, whether it be in confectionery, like Tony's Chocolate Only is a really cool brand, or Oatly or something like that, then we wouldn't do business with them. But then sometimes you have these companies that are really big and have all those brands and don't pay any attention to you. So I still have problems to this day. Like there's a country up in Northern Europe that I'm trying to get at the moment. And I'm contacting people through LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. And even at the level we're at, which is a private company is doing very well, they still wouldn't meet with me, and they, you get ignored. So like years ago, I'd get ignored by the shop owner. Now I'm getting ignored by distributors and retailers. But it's people still ignoring me. I still have to sell.
I think it's important to factor that in, because I think people will listen to this and go, "No, it's easy for Gary, isn't it?" Because he's got a world famous brand. Yeah. But I think it's important to note that you still
getting ignored.
You still get ignored, like just on different levels.
Oh, getting ignored a lot. I mean, I'm always contacting new countries and new companies and whatever, and I'd say 80 to 90% of them never email me back. So, you just got to take it on the chin and just keep going.
Just got to graft. You mentioned something there about distributing. Is that how it works? So if you have an Irish brand, you're like want to distribute into like Belgium, Sweden, France, whatever. Is that how it works? You find someone, a partner in that country, they'll just send it out for you? Yeah.
So, and if you can't find a good distributor, so let's say a distributor will take a percentage. So they might take 25 to 30%. So your percentage model needs to be squeezed a little bit. And if you're in FMCG, if you're not making 35 to 40%, then your business model isn't going to work, because you need to have huge multiples, because you're only selling these for 60, 70 cent to a distributor, and then he makes margin, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a difficult market, but so the UK was a very interesting one. We tried 2 distributors in the UK, and both of them failed. And eventually we were like, we're going to have to do this ourselves. So it's not something that we want to do. It's not part of our business model.
Why did they fail? When you say fail, what didn't work?
It's hard to say. I'm not sure whether the UK is such a big market, 10 times the size of Ireland, that I think that any of the large successful companies were too small for them back in the day. So they just wouldn't even pay you attention. If they're making 10 million quid a year out of something, why would they make 200 grand out of us? So we didn't really wait to find out. We just, I hired one guy, and I basically hired him the keys to the city. And I said, his name is Ryan. He's still with us today. He's a commercial director now in the UK. And I just said, listen, you run this. I had got us Tesco and Tesco, Boots, and then he came in and he got us Sainsbury's, WH Smith, and we're in Co-op, and we're most stores around the UK now, but he's been running it for the last 11 years. And we did that because we had to do it. We also did that in Australia, because again, distributors model didn't work there. We don't want to do it. We don't want to be hiring people ourselves to do a job that someone else could do. Our business model is to create a brand, sell it to somebody. We'll back it up with marketing and online sales to create a kind of a buzz and do some tastings in the country, and then they'll deliver to the stores,
right? And
then the store will sell it.
Okay, so that kind of keeps the model quite lean, even for a big business. You're not putting in HQs in every single office place you go to.
Yeah, and we still only have 30 people in the business.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you run quite a tight ship.
Yeah, and this year we'll sell 50 million bottles.